G'day legends, we're just going to go through the installation of our heat exchanger bracket. So we've got two components that comes with, the main bracket and then the top plate bracket which the heat exchanger sits on. The tools we're going to use are 17mm spanner, 13mm spanner, 5mm Allen key, 1/4 inch ratchet, long extension, 10mm, 13mm and a little knuckle join. So the main bracket is installed under the power steering fluid bottle. So you'll notice that there's a bolt pattern of 3 bolts on it. They line up with these 3 bolts here. So we're going to start off, we're going to undo these 3 bolts. We'll use the 10mm socket and the long extension with the knuckle for the one under the airbox. Once the power steering fluid bottle is loose and the bolts are out, we can lift that up and we can put our bracket underneath. We can line that up with the holes and place down the bottle back on top of it, and now we can go ahead and do up these 3 bolts. Once the bracket is securely mounted in place, we can grab the top bracket and we'll grab the bolt that bolts onto the vehicle. So that sits down on top of that, and you'll notice on the back here it lines up with one of the holes. It's going to do up this finger tight, and then the same on the front 2 bolts. So these are a socket head bolt. They need to be facing down when installed, and we'll do the nut up underneath. So once you've got your 3 bolts in the top bracket on the heat exchanger, we can snug those down, so tightening up the 2 socket heads and then lastly the bolt to the body. Once all 3 of these bolts have been tightened up, the bracket is secured, we can install the heat exchanger. So the heat exchanger, we've got a washer and 2 nuts on this. You can pull those forwards, and that sits down over these 2 slots. From there we can tighten up the nuts and tighten the heat exchanger against the bracket. So we've fixed the heat exchanger to the bracket. If you have something like an aftermarket fuel filter, you'll notice that there's 2 bolts on the back side of the bracket. And that's exactly where you can mount your fuel filter, and then that will bolt up onto that unit. So with the heat exchanger setup, you receive a bunch of fittings. We've got clamps, we've got some elbows, some brass elbows with barbs, and a couple of hoses. So And we'll grab these two fittings here and the hoses. So your brass barb fittings, install them in the top, and that allows you to rotate it, especially down here. So this fitting here, you will only be able to install one of these. And the way the heat exchanger works is the top fittings are linked, so that's coolant, and the bottom fittings will be water only. So make sure that water, coolant, otherwise you'll contaminate your setup. So tighten these up, put glue on them, get them both facing rear, and then the 5/8 heater hose, that'll connect into this hose. So we'll remove this here, we'll put a barb into this fitting, into the hose, into one of the fittings, and then the other hose will connect into this line here, the rigid line. Just make sure that when you're doing the work and connecting into this system, this is the cooling system for the car. It's quite simple connections. However, if you're unsure, check with your mechanic and get some support. That's it. That's the heat exchanger bracket and the heat exchanger installation.